So the guys who helped put Donald Trump back in the White House are now saying they're sorry. Tucker Carlson, one of the most powerful voices in conservative media, just told his audience he will be tormented for a long time by the role he played in getting Trump elected. Theo Von, the comedian turned podcaster star who brought Trump into the living rooms of millions of young men, is now asking on record, what American is this helping? Everyone, thanks for tuning in. It's your girl, Child Bella. Let's get into it. So, the United States is currently at war with Iran. That's not a hypothetical. Bombs have dropped, and the same media figures who spent months pumping up Trump's 2024 campaign are now waking up to what a lot of people were warning them about before a single vote was ever cast. Let me give you a quick rundown on both of these guys so you know what's up, in case you're unfamiliar with them. So we have Tucker Carlson, a former Fox News host who now runs his show on X. He was one of the most visible Trump supporters in the run-up to the 2024 election. He campaigned for him. His brother Buckley wrote speeches for Trump. He used his platform to normalize Trump's return to power. We're talking millions of viewers and subscribers. Theo Von, he's a comedian turned podcaster of the show this past weekend, interviewed Trump in 2024. He's reportedly one of Barron Trump's favorite podcasters. He attended Trump's inauguration in January of 2025 and called it, in his words, inspiring. Among younger non-political audiences, Theo Von was essentially a gateway to Trump. So when both of these guys in the same week start saying, wait a minute, that's not nothing. So let's get into it. So on a recent episode of the Tucker Carlson show, Tucker sat down with his own brother Buckley and said this.
And everyone else who supported him, you wrote speeches for him, I campaigned for him. I mean, we're implicated in this for sure. Yes. It's not enough to say, well, I changed my mind, or like, oh, this is bad, I'm out. It's like, in very small ways, but in real ways, you and me and millions of people like us are the reason this is happening right now. Yes. So I do think it's like a moment to wrestle with our own consciences. We'll be tormented by it for a long time. I will be. And I want to say I'm sorry for misleading people. It was not intentional. That's all I'll say.
So the part that stands out to me, it's not enough to say, well, I changed my mind. Now here's the kicker. Tucker's framing all of this around the Iran war because Trump ran on no more wars. That was the core pitch. In the forever wars, put America first, and now the United States is actively at war with Iran. And Trump literally posted on Truth Social, threatening to wipe Iran off the face of the earth. Tucker, didn't the first presidency tell you what Trump would do if elected again? But I digress. Tucker called the post vile, and he called for people around Trump to do whatever they can legally to stop this because it's insane. Trump shot back on Truth Social, calling Tucker and other critics like Candace Owens nut jobs. Let that land for a second. The president of the United States calling one of his biggest media champions a nut job. I'm not gonna lie, part of me is glad Tucker is finally seeing the light, but then I think about what we actually know about Tucker Carlson's private thoughts, and the picture gets a whole lot more complicated. So here's where it gets real. From the Dominion voting system's lawsuit against Fox News, private text and emails came out that showed what Tucker Carlson actually believed behind closed doors. Around January 6th, the Capitol attack, Tucker privately called Trump demonic. His exact words, I hate him, passionate. He privately wrote that the voter fraud claims, the same claims he was amplifying on air to millions of viewers, were baseless. He privately hoped Trump would just fade away. That was Tucker Carlson behind closed doors. And then, within a year, he's back, airing specials praising January 6th rioters as patriots, calling the mob that stormed the Capitol, quote, confused tourists, campaigning for Trump in 2024, helping him to win. So when Tucker tells his brother it was not intentional, I need you to hear that clearly. He privately knew. He privately felt it. He chose to keep platforming anyway. It wasn't intentional. It's his way of letting himself off the hook. These dots are connecting themselves. The question I keep coming back to isn't whether Tucker Carlson feels bad right now. The question is, who paid the price while he was deciding how he felt? Because while Tucker was building his audience and Buckley was writing speeches, real policy decisions were being locked in. Real people's lives were being shaped by an election these two men actively pushed. And that should concern all of us. Okay, so now let's jump into Theo Von, because his situation hits different. Theo is not a political commentator. He's a comedian with a massive podcast following. And that's exactly why his reach into 2024 was so significant. He wasn't talking to political junkies. He was talking to regular guys, driving, working out, hanging out, the red pillars. And he brought Trump into that space. So now, on a recent episode of This Past Weekend, Theo goes off. He was reacting to Trump's Truth Social post on Easter Sunday. Trump posted a message directed at Iran, calling Iranians crazy bastards, telling them, and I'm quoting, "Open the straight or they'll be living in hell." Signed off, praise be to Allah, on Easter. And here's what Theo had to say about that.
You know, when people are hoping for something new, literally on the day when people are hoping and are believing with their hearts as much as they can and are celebrating something new, a rebirth, a resurrection, a possibility. To write that it's diabolical. It's insane.
And then he asked the question that cuts through all the noise, and he says this.
And it's not. And what American is this helping? Besides the war, the industrial war complex, what American, what hard work, what guy who's trying to take care of his family, or a single mother who's a nurse who's going to work and has to get home and get to her kid's ball game and has to be both parents. What farmer is this helping? What regular person is this helping? I just don't know. I don't understand.
Meanwhile, earlier this month on Joe Rogan's podcast, Theo and Rogan were sitting together asking the same question. Theo asked Rogan straight up, "What do you think is going to happen? You think we're going to be okay?" And Rogan, who hosted Trump on his show and endorsed him, said, "I'm confused. I can't believe we went to this war." Rogan also said Trump's own supporters felt betrayed because Trump ran on "no more wars," in these stupid, senseless wars. And now there's a war nobody can clearly explain. So 3 of the most influential media voices in this country, the same week, the same conclusion. Well, there's a pattern that plays out in American media. A figure builds up a platform. The platform gets powerful. The power gets attached to a political movement. And then when the consequences of that attachment shows up in real life, the figure wakes up. But I want us to think harder about this. Tucker Carlson's own text showed he never fully believed what he was broadcasting. Theo Von wasn't a political operative. He was a guy with a microphone who gave Trump a cool non-political gateway to young voters. And Rogan did the same thing. None of them sat down and really asked Trump the questions that mattered because they were just going with the vibes, bro. Despite what people were trying to warn them about, and their platforms carry huge weight, whether they intended for them to or not. And the people who were raising the flags before November 2024, before the votes were cast, well, those people got called alarmists. They got dismissed. The algorithms didn't push their content. The big podcasts didn't want to have them on. So now, this war is real. The terrorists are real. The instability is real, and the country is crumbling. And now the apologies are rolling in. I think the apologies matter. Tucker saying I misled people on his own platform to his own audience, that's significant. But here's the thing. Accountability without consequence isn't accountability. It's just content. Taking accountability for misleading people into a terrible situation matters more. And I need to see Tucker take accountability. Because the influencer media complex, the podcasters, the commentators, the personalities who shape how millions of people see the world didn't just endorse a candidate, they helped manufacture a political consensus. And when that consensus breaks, one episode of regret isn't the correction. The correction has to be structural and continuous. The real question isn't, are Tucker and Theo sorry? The real question is, what can the audience do with do we start asking harder questions of the platforms we trust before the next election? Because trust me, this cycle will definitely repeat itself. It always does. These dots are connecting themselves. So, here's where I land. Tucker Carlson was fine with promoting and voting for a multi-felon, a corrupt candidate whose policies will hurt groups outside of his, at least he thought, and made choices he now says he regrets. The regret might be real, only time will tell, but it doesn't undo the years of content that moved millions of people toward a candidate he privately doubted. Both things can be true. Theo Von is a person who I think possibly didn't understand the political weight of what he was doing. There's a difference between someone who knew exactly what they were selling and someone who got swept up in a wave and is now looking around asking what's going on. But neither explanation makes the outcome consequence-free. Both of them are now asking the right questions. And I'll leave space for that. While also holding the harder one. Why does it take a war for people to ask, what is this actually doing for Americans? That question should have been asked on the first day. It should have been on the table from day one. So drop it down in the comments. Do you think Tucker's apology is genuine? And do you think guys like Theo Von and Rogan are going to carry this accountability into how they use their platforms on the next go around? Because that's what actually matters. If this gave you something to think about, hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel grow. And if you want real conversations about what's actually happening in the world, hit that subscribe. That's exactly what we do here. And until next time, chat with you soon.